Good afternoon, everyone. It is Ian here from Warrender Technical Solutions. I am going to just give a few people some time to join us, and then we'll begin. Today, the session is about process maps, why I believe they're a major foundation to all businesses, small, medium, large, and we'll be going through that, obviously, in some detail. Absolute gorgeous weather up here in the northeast today. I was considering to see if there was a way to do this outside, but the practicalities obviously weren't there. This is the same session I've been running all summer. This is second to last. The last time you better catch this live. If you can't make it today and you just get no recording, will be next Friday at 1 o'clock. That is just before we get to the main event, which is a week-long course I've got on how to create process maps for your business. And so, as I said, this is the second to last session. I'm just going to do some checks here to make sure that audio is working for yourself. And then we will start. Hope everyone that is joining us today is well. Kids are back at school, so it's really good that you're going to get some uninterrupted conversation from myself, going to quite a bit of detail. And I hope other small businesses that things are picking up for you now, where obviously COVID is affecting all of us still, but September for me is picking things up. Hey, Jen, thank you for joining us. We've got Jen here from Latte & Live. If you haven't already, I would recommend everyone go and visit the small business group on Facebook and join us for some networking. Latte & Live, Google it. But yes, Jen, things are picking up. Got a few new contracts a week ago I didn't have, and some more conversations with people. And yeah, it is good to see that the work that you put in for marketing, it takes time, but we do get there. So I am going to start. So, as mentioned earlier, I'm Ian from Warrender Technical Solutions, bring order to chaos. Warrender Technical Solutions is business support. And what that means is I'll look at your organizational structure, making sure that communication is passed not only from top to bottom, but also that communication from the bottom goes up so that the right people hear what's happening, but also downstream and upstream from the business. And so that the efficiency of communication is there and messages aren't miscommunicated, which you'll see a bit later. Processes, we'll obviously talk about process maps today, but a bit more in depth on the processes, how to make them more efficient, how to make sure that you're not losing or wasting time. Planning is a vital part to any business, and that's about taking your long-term plans and your short-term plans and make sure that the two are meshed so that you're not just focusing on now, you've got the long-term focus, and you're moving the business forward. The day-to-day stuff always has to happen and you have to deal with clients, but at the same time, the business needs to develop. It needs to move forward. Systems, there are so many applications. I was in a meeting earlier today where somebody was talking about new applications that I haven't heard of, and there is so many out there. And it's about finding the right applications, make sure that they're fit for purpose, that you're not overpaying. You haven't got 10 different systems that do small things when there's a system out there that's more expensive in terms of general one for that single system, but it's cheaper than the 10 systems that you've got. And administration. I can help you with automation on that, or if it's a one-off, I can even take it off your hands and complete it, depending on what it is. So I'm always open to short-term contracts like that. I've got a degree in management of engineering technologies, but more importantly is I've got 15 years in business improvement. My own business, Warrender Technical Solutions, has been here for a year. It was his birthday yesterday, but I've got experience in business improvement long before my business came about. So let's talk about the foundational aspect of business. Why do you need that strong foundation? Because there are options. You can build a business ad hoc. You can do something and then learn something else and add to it and then do something else. And you can build a business ad hoc. And to be fair, if you build a business ad hoc or you have a strong foundation with your process maps, systems, organization structures in place, you will get growth from both of those. The difficulty comes at a certain point when you limit that growth, when you don't have that strong foundation and you start chasing yourself. All you're doing is firefighting. You're checking what your staff are doing. You're constantly repeating the same loops, and none of the loops are bringing development to the business. They just repeat the loop to keep your existing clients happy, to maintain the staff. You're not actually doing any growth for your business. You're not actually developing your business further. And that's where the strong foundation comes from, because when you get to that firefighting, that chaotic structure, things can be stressful. You're just being busy, and that can't be maintained long-term from a business. And that growth stops, and the business cannot function long-term in that situation. Where a business built on a strong foundation, you can have that growth, but it's also scalable. With the right process maps, the right systems, the right organization, or the right planning, it's scalable. You're not just doing it for the next month, next 3 months, you're doing it for the long term. So that's the reason why strong foundation is an important one. And you can build that strong foundation in at the point of being chaotic. It is more difficult because you're already busy, and now you're being asked to take a step back and rebuild the foundation of the business. It is possible, but if you've got the opportunity to do it during the growth period, then it's a much better time to actually start that growth. And one of the things that I feel is a key ingredient to that foundation is process maps. Now, I mentioned this term a lot, but what do I actually mean by the word process map? Process map is a flow of activities and data. Really, within your business, you're going to have multiple things that you're doing, multiple strands of activities. You're going to have your core activity for whatever business you're in, but you're also going to have activities for your quotation system. You're going to have activities for how you do your marketing, how you do your cash flow. And all of these have a defined starting point, something that kicks off that process. It doesn't just start from nothing. There is something that starts it. That starting point, you'll also have some inputs. Now, this input could be raw materials if you're making a product, or it could be information if you're a system-based business. Or it could be resources if it's people. People are an input. Whichever it is, they will lead to decisions that need to be made within the business. Now, I've got something called binary decision points here, which I will come into more detail shortly. But the point is that there are decisions being made within the business that will lead to outputs. Now, the outputs we've got here are the final product. If it's a production industry you're in, there will be elements that lead to the final product. Or if it's service, this will be elements that lead to that final whatever the service is. So it could be an element of a report, or it could be some key information that you've got that will lead to solving a solution. There's obviously going to be steps, and process maps are absolutely massive when it comes to steps. That's the whole reason, what you do from here and a logical progression to how you get to the next point. And there needs to be an identifiable endpoint. Sometimes, depending on how complex your business is, those endpoints could then become inputs to other processes, but there needs to be some defined way to say that what we started here, we then achieve this at the end. Now, I mentioned on the other one, the binary decision points. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, take this statement here. Somebody says to me that the client can choose between metal, hardwood, and plastic for their production business. Now, you could envisage a process map that has this. What material did the client select? Well, they select metal, got to follow steps A, hardwood, step B, plastic, step C. That's not how I do process maps. That's not the right way to do, your mapping. Instead, what we get with the binary decision points is only two options. Now, those two options could be yes, no. They could be continue, stop. They could be a multitude of things, but the point is there's binary. There's only two options involved in it. Anyone that's done programming will be familiar with this, where you've got your stop and go gates. Now, why is that important for process maps? Well, let's follow this through. Did the client select metal? Yes, follow step A. Okay, no difference there. And then we go to the next one. Did the client select hardwood? Yes, step B. No, did the client select plastic? Now, initially, you're just seeing that the same thing that we had previously is repeated, but we're actually giving ourselves a fourth option. What happens if the client asks for something bespoke, something that isn't in the standard? You might say, well, we don't give them that option. If somebody comes up with a bespoke material, we tell them they need to select one of these. That's still some steps that you go to. There's still a communication with the client. There's still a description there that then leads back to the start of this loop. You could say, we help them then select the material that's close to the bespoke one asking. Well, there's several steps there. There's going to be some decisions about how you select that material, how you judge what they're asking meets the requirements. You could say, well, if they go down the bespoke route, we go through these steps, and there's a whole different step D that people follow to complete that. Now, because it's binary, it gives us the option to look at all the possibilities. And this is important because one of the main reasons why we create process maps isn't for our own use, it's for other people. And when we're a small business and we have got all the experience behind why we're doing what we're doing, if something out the standard happens, we just fall back on our experience. We've got vast amount of experience where we do something non-standard happens, we do X. We look at what we've done before, we make a decision to do this. Somebody coming in the business, be that staff or especially if it's someone outside the business like a VA, doesn't have the luxury of that experience. They can't make those decisions the same way that we can just naturally decide to do something. And it's that ability to look at the non-standard, decide how to deal with the non-standard, and then communicate that to others that makes the process map so valid, so strong in its usage. And also with that, you can't do that if you just open up your decision points to as many different options as possible, because you will miss the non-standard, the fourth alternative that you just not thinking of. So beyond what a process map is and beyond that, there's three reasons why I put down that process maps are essential foundation stone to any business. Now, there's more than three, but we don't have the whole afternoon for me to list off 20, and it'd probably take me, I could talk about this subject, if you haven't noticed, for a very long time. So we're going to focus down on three key ones, which I think are going to be of importance to yourselves. So To do this, we need to follow either Bob or Bobby's story. And we don't have anyone on Zoom today. We've just got people on Facebook and we've got people on YouTube. So I'm just going to pick, just for the benefit of today, I'm going to pick Bob today. And because it's the second to last one, I'm going to actually use myself as the example. Don't normally do this, and if I had somebody on Zoom, I'd get them to pick some information about the character. But today, let's say he's just like me. He's 40, and he got a degree later on during. I know that's not spelled right. Don't worry about that. It's not important. And I produce a service, and I'm a business. Now, we've got some very basic things about me, including my dyslexia there on the word employment. I'm not going to worry about that too much. We've got some information, and really what we're saying here is we could go through my childhood, we could go through my marital status, we could go through my plans for the future. There's lots of things that we could detail about myself, but the whole point about this is that Bob, who is surrogate for myself in this particular situation, is a unique individual. And I'm going to move away from myself. I'm just going to put all this onto Bob. I'm going to talk about Bob moving forward. Bob is a unique individual. Although there'll be similarities between certain aspects of yourself and Bob and other people, the whole 40 years that Bob's been around has shaped him in a particular way to make him unique. And he's going off with this business consultant business. Good luck to him. And there are elements of what he's doing that will make him, as I said, unique. He's not particularly you. He's not particularly anybody. He's just a unique person with his own unique thoughts. Now, when he's 40, starting a business, he's obviously had experience beforehand. And in that previous life, when he's had his experience, he would have done things in a particular way in the office. He would have done his consultancy, his business improvement. There are certain steps that he would have followed, that the business that he was working for would, require him to do. But Bob, he's not going into self-employment just to replicate what he did in an office environment. He's going in there to do something new. He's got some new unique ideas, and he's going to follow those through. And he's going to do things, that meet what he thinks should be done. There's going to be things that he's bringing from the past. He's not reinventing the wheel, but he is going to do things differently. Now, the important thing to know, because Bob's going off by himself, he's not employing anybody at the moment. He's a unique, he doesn't need anyone else to follow these processes. So these steps are inside his head. Yes, he knows what he's doing. He's got some ideas about them, but he's not writing them down. He's got them inside his head of, this is how I want to do things. This is how I want to move things forward. But that's the core element. That's the main consulting part of the business. Anyone that starts a new business knows it's not just about the core elements. There's all the other things you need to do with quotations, marketing, cash flow. There's all sorts of external factors that you need to bring into it. And for this, Bob has gone on courses. He's joined groups. He's joined communities to learn how to do this. And from there are elements that he's going to take from those external ideas, those suggestions, those training, and he's going to morph them into how he wants to work. So amongst that, although the majority is going to be from things he's learned, things he's done, there are going to be elements in there which are unique to him, which he wants to do, which works, which is the way he wants to work, which he thinks is going to enhance those lessons that people's told him, the training that he's done. Now, again, it's important to note these are ideas inside his head. They're not mapped out anywhere. They're not any, clear places. For the training, he's probably got notes. He's probably got some notes, some key ideas, some key thoughts of how he wants to do things, but they're not the same as having those strong ideas. It's not the same as having that process map. It's just going to have some key notes of how he wants to do things. 18 months pass, and Bob has learned some things. He's had some failures, but he's also had some successes. And because Bob understands about businesses, he's learned from both those successes and those failures. So his processes are going to morph. He's going to do things slightly different when a new challenge comes along. He's going to change the way he handles things, the way he tackles certain situations. And because of that, he is learning and his processes are going to change. Still not mapping them out anywhere. It's still inside his head. But the point is that they're not going to stay the same. They are going to evolve as the business evolves. And because his consulting is growing really well, Bob's going to now hire 3 people to aid him in the consulting and take some of the business. Now, we're going to leave Bob briefly, and we're going to come back to him shortly with his business. And instead, I'm going to get yourselves to do something. If you get a piece of paper and a pencil, pen will do, but paper and pencil. I'm assuming you've all drawn, whether that was when you were 5-year-old and you drew a picture that got in the fridge, or maybe you're an artist and this is something you do. Well, I'm going to commission you to draw me a picture. I'm going to give you some simple instructions. Just want you to put down what I say on the paper. And then we'll have a look to see what you drew. And I'll put you out your misery by showing you what you should have drawn. Very simple exercise. Now, provided you've got the pencil and paper there, if you can just start with a horizontal line about 2/3 up the page or 1/3 from the top. Just a simple horizontal line. It would be nice in the near future to do this in person. This activity is so much more fun when you can see what people are doing and how far along they're getting. So on the horizontal line, if you can then draw a semicircle just on that horizontal line. Yeah, one of the activities I am looking at doing is on process mapping a Brexit import and export controls. So it'd be really interesting to look at the in-depth of that, and if others would like some information on not the process maps I'm drawing obviously, but support on creating your own process maps for Brexit and import and export routines, I would be willing to look at that in the near future. So dropping down from that semicircle, a rectangle, just dropping down, not rectangle, put my teeth in today, dropping down from that semicircle is a triangle. Apologies for that brief error. So you got your horizontal line, on top of it you've got a semicircle, and dropping down from it you've got a triangle. Now, inside that triangle, once you've done it, if you could draw a smaller triangle. As we'll discuss shortly, one of the things you'll find with process maps once you start using them is you'll get a sense of the complexity of a certain situation, which I'm expecting to get into with this new project I'm doing. And with that complexity also comes an understanding of efficient routes on how best to tackle those situations. Everything has a start and end point, and it's really just the path that we go through, that maze we go through to get from one to the other. So we've got a triangle. We've got the inner and outer triangle, so we've got a gap between them. Now, inside that gap between the inner and outer triangle, if you can draw a series of horizontal lines. I'm also continuing doing Trello development, if that is of interest to people. Trello is really good at replicating the processes that we're talking about, because you can do automations to bring one step to the other, and you can even bring in those decision points. So if that's of interest, let me know. So on the inner triangle now, let's focus on that. Inside there, a series of thin rectangles. So a series of thin rectangles inside that inner triangle. So let's have a think. On the left-hand side of those thin rectangles that you've just drawn, draw a car. Now, challenge you to draw a better car than I did. You'll see my car a bit later. But yes, on the left-hand side, my brain is losing it today. On the left-hand side of those thin rectangles, draw a car. Now, this is where your picture is going to start getting a bit complicated. So we're nearly getting towards the end. So just keep with it for now. Now then, on the left-hand side, let's get the sides right. Outside of the large triangle, just following the edge of it, but up into and just past the horizontal line. So repeat that again, just outside the large triangle, following the edge of it, just up into just beyond the horizontal line, draw 3 thin rectangles, vertical rectangles. Face-to-face networking is also picking up. I went to a Northeast Chamber event last week. I think it was Thursday. It's really good to actually see people not on the screen. And I've got a B&I meeting a couple of weeks' time, face-to-face. We normally do it online. And I've also got a Mint Business Group face-to-face. So, actually starting to make some of those real-world connections. Now, those thin rectangles we've just drawn, if you can top them with a circle. So those thin rectangles that we've just drawn on the left-hand side, top them with a circle, but to make it interesting, if you can make them bumpy circles. Now then, we're almost there. And all we need to do is fill out the right-hand side. I'm going to fill out between the edge of the triangle, the large triangle, and the horizontal line. If you could put another 2 rectangles, vertical, but they don't need to be thin, just chunky rectangles. And if you can, to make it interesting, make them 3D cuboids. So on the right-hand side, 2 chunky rectangles, vertical rectangles, but actual cuboids instead of just boring rectangles. Now, if you could top those cuboids, one with a semicircle and one with a triangle, we'll see what you've got. So what have people got? Usually at this point, if we were in person, we could actually bring them up. But usually people may have a scales, or they may have a mess, or I haven't seen it yet. You might actually have the real thing. So let's have a look to see what the real thing actually looks like. So I'm going to go through the exact same instructions, no different, and we'll see where we end up. A horizontal line, 2/3 up, 1/3 down from the top. On top of it, we have a semicircle. Dropping down from that, we have a triangle. Inside that triangle, we have another triangle. Between the two triangles, so we've got that gap there that we can see, we're going to have a series of horizontal lines. And then in the center of the small triangle, we're going to do some thin vertical rectangles. Now this is where you probably improved on what I did. On the left-hand side, we've got a car. No, I said a car. That'll have to do. Now, on the left-hand side, between the outer triangle and the horizontal line well just past it, we've got 3 thin vertical rectangles. And we're going to top those with circles, but because we want to make it interesting, we said bumpy circles. And on the other side, we have got 2 not so thin rectangles, but we will make it interesting. So we said, make them 3D, make them cuboids. I'm going to top one with a semicircle and a triangle. Now, how many people got this? Very few from what I've done. I've done this lots of times and have never seen anyone actually get this. So what goes wrong? Is it my explanation? Is it the terminology I'm using? Is it my assumptions of what you are doing? I'm not checking on each stage and giving you more detailed description. Is it that I'm not using the descriptions on for what things are? Or is it a mixture of all those? And to be honest, it is a mixture of all those elements. When someone comes into your business for the first time and they're sitting down doing training, they start off with a blank page. If your training consists of verbal communication, of talking to them and telling them what to do, they don't have a sense of what the picture is going to be. A lot of industries, almost every industry, not a lot, almost every industry has its own terminology. You can think of that in accounting, you can think of that in manufacturing, you can think of that in almost any business, catering, whatever it is, that will have its own terminology, its own abbreviations, its own elements of its own way of discussing things. Now, someone coming into your business, especially if they haven't been in the industry before, you probably don't want to use the terminologies, the abbreviations, the same way that I didn't use the word sunset. I didn't use the word trees. I didn't use the word building. I didn't use the word car because trying to describe how to draw that car would have took us an extra 20 minutes and got even more complicated. I didn't use the word path or road because I don't know what your background is. I don't know what your knowledge of what those elements are. So the same way someone comes into your business, you don't want to use accounting terminology. You want to just try and keep things straightforward, simple, give them some instructions that they can follow. But are they going to follow it? They've got a blank page. More than that, what are they going to take away? You're sitting there, give them instructions. They're making notes. Are their notes connected to what you actually want them to do? If you're going through a particular example, is that example representative of everything that they're going to come across? Or is this particular one something you do for this client and you're describing how to do it because the examples for this client, and then they go away and they replicate that for other clients without you realizing that they haven't picked up that nuance, that understanding of those differences. You're explaining things to them and then set them off to do something and come back and find out that what you thought you told them isn't what they've done. Process maps aid in supporting and enhancing all of this. You are writing the notes. You are telling them what the key things are. You are giving them those decision points so that if you do something for one particular client and something different for other clients, they can see that. They can say, okay, we're doing this on this particular time. If it was a different client, we'd do this. And you point to that on paper. You can give them the abbreviations, the descriptions, and you can have a glossary of terms so they can see more detail in terms of what the picture's going to be. But more importantly, you can also take a step back and say, and create a training process map and say, I want you to follow these steps here and come and see me. If what they end up with is incorrect, you can have conversations, see whether it's their interpretation or whether the process map needs updated. But you have that basis to have those discussions, to have that training, and they are not coming into a blank page. They have the description, the knowledge, and later on you have the confidence that you can take an afternoon and they can continue doing things on. And this is even more vital when you deal with people outside your business. A VA has lots of other clients. They don't need to have those conversations, those long-term conversations to try and understand what you're doing. They need to be able to just get on with things, and you need to be able to leave them to get on with things. It works on both sides. So the third reason why process maps are essential is because of training. I'm 100% not saying get somebody into a business, first day, throw a process map on the desk and say, get on with your job. I am saying that communication has to be combined with the process map. You need to have that sit down, you need to have that talking, you need to have that in conjunction, and you get them working onto your systems, your way of working so much faster, with so much less frustration, with so much more confidence. So third reason why process maps are essential is because of training. Let's come back to Bob. Bob's just hired 3 people to start working for him. And Bob knows the power of process maps. And so Bob gets one of the technical solutions to produce them for him. Now, when we produce those process maps, we don't have those lovely colors in there that we were talking about, that we had before about his experiences, his new ideas. We're just mapping out what it is that we're described, what it is that we see, and producing the process maps based on that. Now, a couple of things are going to happen while we're producing this. One is that Bob is going to see his business for the first time from a top level. He's been in there working it every day. He's been in there doing some of the firefighting. He's been in there doing some of the heavy lifting of it. But this will be the first time that Bob has actually took a step back and looked at how he's done it. He could picture it in his head, but that's not the same as actually having it down on paper. So Bob's going to start seeing things and going, actually, I think we can do that better. Now I'm looking at those steps I do. I did those because early on in the business, this wasn't happening as I wanted. But overall, actually, I don't want to continue doing that. I want to do things in a different way. He's going to start making changes on his own processes because of that. But in addition, when myself or somebody independent to the business is creating this process maps, we're going to ask questions. We're going to, first of all, if Bob says he does A and then he does D, we're going to say, but how do you get from A to D? There's something missing. There's no logical steps there. And he's going to describe B and C. We're going to get that filled out. But also, because of our experiences with business improvement, we're going to go, why do you do that? What's the benefit of those actual steps that you got there? Or do you not think you need a check at this point because somebody else other than you are doing it, and this is a complex series of steps you got here? Do you not want some checks in there before a staging gate before people continue on? And having that understanding is also going to help enhance Bob's processes. Now, as I said, it doesn't need to be warranted technical solutions, but it does need to be someone independent, somebody that isn't going to be afraid to ask Bob the difficult questions of why, and also be able to make suggestions of possible changes. And so that can be someone internal to the business, providing they've got the authority before going down that road of being able to make those changes. But also, we're going to use this for training. Bob's got 3 new people. He's going to use this in conjunction with communication to train people. And when people are trained, they can ask why. Now, occasionally, Bob probably can say, nope, this is the way we do it. Why we do it? Because of my experience, and this is why we're doing it. But new people, even outside the industry, grew up with different technology, different backgrounds, different way of working, and they may come up with a suggestion or a new way of doing something that we haven't considered because we do it in one particular way, and a new generation or a different upbringing will do it in a different way. And that will lead itself into having those ability to progress the business, to make updates. And so having the process map there at all, having the process map generated, will lead to the ability of improvements. And so the process map is going to change. New experiences outside of Bob's, but new experiences are going to develop, are going to occur. Now, this is only possible with the process maps existing. You can't have that knowledge and understanding from just thinking inside your head about what's the fastest way of doing something and having a conversation, because you both might not be talking about the same thing. And process maps are the exact same as any other KPI that you got within your business. When you're looking at your cash flow and you know that a particular month is quiet or busy and you want to balance that out, you can look at that and make those decisions. Whether that's marketing, you're looking at which platform actually works best for you so you know where to put your effort, your resources. Process maps are the exact same. As things change within your business, you'll have new revisions of your process map so that if things go wrong, you can then look at the previous way things were done and maybe take a step back or do something different. But you can make those decisions because you have a process map. Further to that, if you're bringing in a new system, so you're wanting to bring in a brand new system into your business, I'm doing this with one of my clients at the minute. We're looking at a new booking system for her spa. You can create a process map with that future state. Obviously, it's going to be predictive. It's going to be based on known information, but you can still put it in there. You can still put a predictive process map of how you expect it to be. What is it that's going to affect the business? What elements do you need to strengthen? What elements are going to weaken through that? And is that the best way forward? Similarly, if you're going to have new staff, you don't just want staff to replicate exactly what was done before, because if you expand, You want to start splitting things off. You want to start giving sections of processes to different people so that you've got strengths in different areas. All of these can be mapped out before you get to the point of kicking it off, of moving that thing forward and buying that software. And when that comes in, you then evaluate it with your predictions, with reality, and you can make modifications based on that, because predictions are brilliant and all the knowledge is absolutely fine, but reality always brings up something that you weren't aware of, shows you something that's new that you didn't know. So why are process maps essential for business improvement? It's that ability to be able to look at your business from a top level and make decisions on it, for other people to be able to comment on it and aid with that business improvement. So it's not just one person's head going, I think I'm going to do this different this week. What's the benefit of it? What's it going to change downstream? Is that the most efficient improvement? Can that improvement be done in a better way? Now, right at the beginning, I chose between Bob and Bobby. And we left Bobby behind. And Bobby is in her early 30s. She did a degree straight after school. And she also decided at this time to go into business consultancy. It's a difficult time with COVID, and businesses need that support. And as people come out of it, it's going to get busy. She also had a good, successful 18 months, and she's expanding out. Now, she isn't creating process maps. She's just training people through verbal communication, and she's come across a few issues. Everyone's working remotely, and they're not quite following what she wants. And when she gets feedback, when she sees completed work, it's not exactly what she asked, what she thinks she asked for, and she's starting to get a bit frustrated with the whole thing. Now, Bobby, as I said, different age, different education. She also would do different training. She might go to the same training, but her outtakes from that training are going to be different. Her what she feels is important, what she brings uniquely to it, it's going to be different. So although the core element, there's going to be some similarities between them, they're not going to be identical because they're different people. They've potentially got different training, but even the same training they have taken, they're going to see differently. They're going to surround themselves with different people, different suggestions, just different outtake completely. So there can be some similarities between that core process, but there's going to be differences. They're not going to be identical. And Bobby is realizing through networking events, through looking at Bob's online presence, that he appears to be getting more work than her. He seems to be busier. And Bobby's heard this thing that people say, that people are the business. And she thinks to herself that her business will be successful if she has Bob's employees. So in this fictional world that we're now creating, Bobby goes online and finds out that Bob's employees like bacon. So she offers them free bacon sandwiches every morning and a pay rise if they come and work for her instead of Bob. Bob needs some new people. There's 3 consultants available in the workspace, so he hires Bobby's previous employees. Now, in this fictional world, because we've changed employees, does that mean we've changed the business, that we've swapped the business around? As Bobby had the impression of, are the people the business? Does that mean the businesses have now swapped? No. You see, Bob might have 3 employees with some consultancy background or whichever area of the consultancy he's hiring them for, but he's still going to be training them on his process maps. He's still going to be instilling on them what he feels is important, what makes his brand different. They're going to be following his knowledge and his experience based on those process maps. Now, Bobby might think that she's getting 3 people to cover what Bob's done, but those 3 people that come into her business, she's not just going to let them do exactly what they want, because she's still going to have some key ideas on what is going to make her business successful, and she's going to instruct them to do. But in addition to that, they're not going to bring process maps across, because that's not what people consider as important. So they're not going to be, even with some free reign, they're not going to be following those processes that they did originally to letter. And if the non-standard happens, they won't have those process maps to rely on what Bob would have done. Instead, they're going to ask Bobby, what would you do in this situation, and follow hers. So swapping people doesn't change the DNA of the process. It doesn't change what it is. Now, why does Bobby think that people are the business? It's because of the consensus of what makes a business a good place to work for. And what makes a good place to work for is the culture. It's the people you work with. It's the conversations that you have about the weekend. It's about the knowledge that you have about people's families. It's talking about the local sports team. That's the culture, and that's what you remember 10, 15, 20 years down the line about the people you worked with, about what they were like, about their family, about their likes and dislikes, about sport. That's what you think about. You don't think about the minute-to-minute work that you're doing, about that spreadsheet or that email or that client conversation that you had. That isn't what we remember, but that is, at that moment in time, the critical aspect of the business. That's what's going to bring the money in the business. That's what's going to keep them employed. That's what's going to keep the business revolving and being successful. And that only comes from the process map. So although the business culture is very important to give people the environment they want to work with, the process maps and the processes behind those is what makes the business successful and is the business. So why are process maps essential? They represent the business DNA. They detail what makes that business unique. What makes that business stand out? What is it that they do that's different to other businesses? And having that ability to detail that, to understand that, is critical. Now, when I say that people aren't the business, it's not strictly true for all circumstances. So Bob becomes more successful. He's never really thought about Bobby and her issues and everything else. And he's actually gone from strength to strength. And 5 years down the line, he's hired more people and he's got various different functions that they're all doing. And Tim here has always been good at marketing. Tim has shown an aptitude for it, and Bob's recognised that, and so he sent Tim out on actual marketing courses to get marketing qualification. And when Tim comes back, he gives Tim a marketing department, because he's getting to that area in the business now where there's different departments, different functions. And we said right at the beginning that Bob wasn't a marketing expert. It was something that was necessary to start the business, but Tim now is. And Tim is going to take those marketing processes and enhance them, take them a step further. We go back to that picture we did earlier. If I got an actual artist in and I said to them, draw me this picture, and I gave them some actual descriptions, not the basic shapes I gave yourselves. I said, draw me a cityscape with buildings on one side, tree line on the other, a sunset, a road going off in the sunset, and cars driving along the road. They would have drawn me something, a piece of art. They would have enhanced my instructions. And that happens when people come in and they are experts in their field. They will enhance what you did. They'll enhance your processes. They're not going to completely change it. And that's because usually the people that we can work with are people that have a certain way of thinking, and so a certain understanding. And so Tim isn't, because Bob and Tim's work together, they're going to have a similar sort of understanding how to do things, not identical, because no one's way of thinking is identical. But Tim will be able to take those processes and modify them. And Bob's going to be involved in that in some way. Bob is going to, want to be involved and know what Tim's doing, but he trusts Tim. That's the reason why he sent him on the courses. That's the reason why he's put in charge of the department. And that means that area of the business Bob knows is, going to manage itself. And that will take time off Bob to develop and manage the rest of the business. So let's go back through about why process maps are essential. The third reason is training. They enable you to get to that point with the verbal communication and the process maps to get people working faster, to aid them in their understanding of what their function is within the business and how they're moving things forward. But also the business improvement. So the fact that the process maps exist means that you've got a visual indication of what the business is doing, and from there you can make actual decisions on improvements, on changes, on efficiencies, because you've got a physical map of where the business is. And the number one reason is they represent the business DNA. They show what it is that the business is unique. They show what the business is doing that no other business is doing. So they're the three reasons why process maps are a key foundation stone to any business. And as I said, there's plenty of the reasons we could go into. We touched on right at the beginning about that experience, about that non-standard, being able to put your experience down, and knowledge transfer is I'll put number 4. And there's plenty of the ones that we've touched on in brief and that I could touch on in detail. Talking about detail, of 20th to 24th of September, I've got a 5-day course where we'll go through not why process maps are important, that's the point of today's session, but going through what makes the process maps, how to make those process maps, an understanding of the processes behind their creation, the critical questions to ask. And also you'll have access to my unique insights and the experiences that I can bring to the table. And with that, you're going to get some exclusive offers to post-training. Now, the course is, as I said, 5 days long, and the elements that we're going to go through on that course. The first day is called the blank page, where we go in a bit more detail about taking a step back from the business and removing preconceptions that people have. And then the second day, we go in the structure of process maps, how to generate them, what sort of thinking do you have to do behind the actual construction of them. Third day, something quite important, is the creative versus restrictive. There's a general feeling out there that process maps will restrict the creativity in the business, which isn't the case. It's about determining which elements are structured and which elements are open. Fourth day is a test and confirm cycle. There's no point just creating a process map and assuming it's correct. There needs to be some testing of it. There needs to be some confirmation of what it is in there. And then finally, we get into formats and styles, about how the process map can look and should look, and the elements that make it a business quality process map. We'll talk about things like swim lanes and certain key information, which we can't go into in a short session like today. No process map software will be needed, just a computer, obviously for Zoom. If you've got access to Microsoft Office, it's got the building blocks that you'll have in there, but a pencil and paper will be sufficient for everything that we need to do in there. There's a QR code there. If you scan it, it'll take you to the course to book it. It is £700. However, there are opportunities to pay that across the year by joining WTS subscriptions. For that, just contact me. My details are at the top corner there to see how you can take part in the course for a fee that will spread over a year. And that is our hour up for today. So thank you very much for people's time. I appreciate everyone that joined me today. Anyone catching me on the recording, as I have mentioned, that we're doing this one last time, which is on Friday the 17th. I believe it's 17th. Let me just check that. Yeah, Friday the 17th, just before the actual week-long session. So if you catching the end of this and you want to actually take part and ask questions, join me then. And thank you very much for everyone's time.